Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Made in Abyss, Dawn of the Deep Soul on Hulu. And the thing is, I had seen that the second season of Made in Abyss was being on Toonami and was premiering and everything, but the thing was, I started watching like the first episode, and I'm like, wait a minute, what the fuck's going on? They were supposed to like meet Bondrewd and go through that whole kind of thing, so I quickly stopped that and one of my family members had a thing for Hulu, and I'm like, that's on there. So I'll watch this thing. And I enjoyed the movie overall, but it was just a giant elongated episode to me. Like, it's even kind of hard for me to even kind of go and try and contemplate what to even kind of cut. It just seemed like this could have been, well, granted, an elongated episode they could have cut out into kind of better kind of parts. Now, granted, they did really good job with the action that was going on with, like, Reg fighting Bondrewd at multiple points. It's kind of very kind of basic. We get that Nanachi and Reg and Rico pretty much are going to trying to get to the next layer and everything. Nanachi is very apprehensive of trying to deal with Bondrewd and everything. But they get introduced to Bondrewd's supposed daughter, Vrishka, which is kind of like an adopted daughter that we learned that he pretty much saw this kid that was like getting like screwed up and everything and attempting to kind of, I don't even know why. Like, we see that Bondrewd is a very knowledge-based and obsessed character. He does things to learn more about what's kind of going on. Now, granted, Vrishka has more of a love towards Bondrewd that we see throughout the whole kind of story that unfolds here, calling him Papa and being very distraught when things start kind of going wrong. But I think that we needed more to be delved into with like their whole kind of relationship to kind of get more of that effect. Not that they don't give at least enough of it to understand what their relationship is, but I think if this had been half of a season or like done a little bit longer to let it breathe a little bit, we would have gotten like Bondrewd's other side, because otherwise he just pretty much uses her towards the end of the film. And they kind of like go in and they're allowed to stay for the night. Vrishka's kind of like happy, kind of similar to other kind of young children that are within the abyss and wanting to learn about other things, wanting to learn about the surface, which is interesting because you're like, hey, all these people are diving into this fucking giant hole in the ground, and there's people that are in the hole in the ground. It's like, I wonder what the fuck's up there. It's like, it's kind of cool to have that kind of perspective. And we do see that there is the curse within this layer, and Vrishka has this creature, Menya, which is able to do stuff similar to Nanachi, who can find kind of holes within the curse and allows them to get up, because Rico wakes up in the middle of the night and sees that Nanachi is off pretty much who knows where, but we know that he's talking with Bondrewd and trying to get him to let them leave. Reg pretty much gets captured by the Umbra Hands, the other people that are under Bondrewd, and they start experimenting on him, cutting off his right arm, checking on his urine, because they have a thing hooked up. It's like the kind of weirdest kind of way to kind of go about understanding Reg as whatever he is, be it a relic or human fused with relics and everything like that, to pretty much be able to function better within the abyss. It's just like, okay, you just went off right off the bat and just kidnapped and everything. It's the biggest kind of thing is pacing, in that there's some kind of dead spots where not a lot's really happening, which I don't mind as long as you're like giving off the atmosphere, giving off amazing visuals. And granted, one of the best kind of things is the visuals of this. It is very beautifully done, as well as the action going on, because it also informs the characters. How they fight Bondrewd the first time, how Reg, after he takes certain countermeasures, fights a second time, and then the third time when they're actually trying to like fucking get him done. But Vrishka sees what's kind of going on, tries to get them out. They're able to get Reg and get his arm as well, because that factors into the other kind of bits. And Reg is I hesitate to say all right, but like he bled a little bit first, but then we see that it kind of heals enough in that it's still the kind of metal arm, and he's got certain kind of things going through it, evidently some kind of blood circulatory system, but it caps off, and it's like, okay, that's interesting to kind of see. And we had also learned that Reg has about like 3 incinerator shots left, but then after he gets kind of like a charge boost, it goes up to like 10 or whatnot, I think. So they kind of try and escape onto the 5th layer. Bondra tries to go after them. They actually set a trap of using stinger heads that pretty much take out the Umbra hands that he had, and then we see Reg pretty much trying to like, and Rico and Nanachi doing their kind of thing to try and like take him out. And Reg kind of like dacks him down into this sea of corpses kind of place, and then pulls him up to affect him with the curse, and he's like fucked up, and they like smash a boulder on his ass, and Pushka's like, why'd you kill my dad? It's like, he is horrible. Like, it is a good kind of example of you must understand what you are trying to accomplish when you are attempting to gain knowledge. This person, Bondrewd, does not care what he does to get knowledge. He does it for whatever is possible and will sacrifice anything. He has done that with Nanachi and Midi and all of those children, and even to Prushka as well. And he just does horrible things to people. I mean, he fucking abducted Reg and chopped, well, his Umbra hands did, but we learned that that's kind of the same thing. Because they pretty much kill Bondrewd here. Prushka's freaking out, but then another one of his Umbra hand comes, does this weird kind of transformation thing, puts on the helmet, and is kind of even got kind of cursed stuff of looking more kind of monsterish. It's like, what the fuck's going on? There's stuff that kind of needs more explanation. Now, granted, I don't need a complete explanation, but I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, come on, Prushka, let's go do. And then they're like, what the fuck? And we pretty much learned that he's got a relic that has allowed him to disperse his consciousness among his Umbra hands. So it's essentially the Hydra kind of protocol. You kill one, another one will take their place. And the thing is, we learned that his white whistle is made actually from Bondrewd himself. Like, he sacrificed himself. Like, you have to do that to get down further into other kind of layers and to actually get your white whistle. And we learn at the end how Rico gets her white whistle. Because it's made from lifestone and it needs to be turned into its kind of form. We learn that kind of in season 2 more. So just a little bit of foreshadowing and just like, hey, this is knowledge that we're going to get later on. Granted, that's not really in this movie, but it shows up. It's like, wow, okay, like, he did sacrifice himself, but that's the kind of thing. He doesn't care what the cost is. Like, that is the big kind of thing with his character, and we see it no more prevalently than what he does to Prushka, as we see that Reg needs more power, so he pretty much goes in to, like, get that. Rico kind of tries to find around Prushka, as well as Nanachi, and we see that Bondrewd decides to make curse repellent briefcases, which is really kind of strange. Like, I understand the idea, but everything that we had seen up into this effect of how the Abyss works did not really showcase that you are able to shoot off the curse like this to another kind of semi alive thing, because what he does is he pretty much just literally whittles down Prushka to her basic kind of organs, so that way if he's fighting around and ascending, the Abyss's curse will be drawn to her and fuck off with her and other kind of children. It's like, that's very fucked up, but it needs a little bit more explanation of what's going on. And somehow, because Prushka loves him, he gets the blessing instead of the curse. And the thing is, we still don't have much of a handle on what fucks you up and makes you cursed versus what keeps you blessed and has Nanachi. Because Nanachi is the prime example that we see of the blessing at work. And then when Bondrewd's fighting at the end, he starts getting the blessing as well because of Prushka's love. Well, he gets that set up. They see that kind of going on, and Bondrewd's pretty much trying to do his kind of Bondroid thing before Reg pretty much essentially eats a power cord, gets supercharged up, goes nutty dude on nutty day, like he doesn't even kind of remember. Something like makes him go completely and he like blasts in and start like beating the shit out of him. Now granted, that was a really kind of cool looking fight scene, but then they're able to Reg still got some issues because Bondroid has access to various other kind of artifacts as well, this kind of like lightsaber-ish kind of thing that does light blasts similar to kind of the incinerator, other kind of artifacts as well, as they start kind of fighting up, but then Reg kind of gets back to himself, and we start a third one as Reg and Bondroid pretty much fight in where he was dropping down Nanachi and Mitty. And we see that Bondroid, of course, is ascending, but we see that he is using his curse briefcases, and it's fucking up Prushka and turning him kind of into something similar to Nanachi, where he's already kind of like mutated to a weird kind of spot, but yet he's getting fluffy and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay. I'm against it. We just don't get complete explanation, and of course, Reg's able to handle everything until Rico pretty much gets in position and is able to use Reg's incinerator in his removed arm, which that needs some kind of explanation as well. I guess since you're doing that, essentially, it doesn't matter if it's connected to a power source or connected to Reg. It's able to do it on its own, which is okay if, other than the fact that it's like they needed to be able to take out Bondroid and the plot demanded it, because it feels more a little bit plot demandsy for me, whereas I would have rather had that Reg was able to do it himself and that his arm, even though they're carting it around like that, is just his arm. And then at some point he gets access back up to like his 10 because of like, but we see that Prushka is dying, well, because she's pretty much been like whittled down, and then she burps up out of her case her life stone, and that's how Rico gets her white whistle, and the others are able to get in this weird little ball thing and drop down to the 6th layer, and that's kind of the end. Bondroid kind of is interesting in that his one body dies and he goes to another one, and he congratulates Nanachi. Even when they're fighting him, he does not see it as them clashing and that they're enemies. It's another way of gaining knowledge, which is a very interesting way to look at that kind of situation as a character, and that's saying that his new kind of passion is to push Nanachi forward and to see what else is going on with the Abyss. And that's pretty much where it ends, and then we go off with season 2, which is over halfway, and we're kind of getting towards the end of that, so we'll see kind of where that ends, what kind of happens with that. It was just, I didn't see why this needed to be a movie. Not that it was badly done or anything. The visuals were great. The music worked out well. I watched it in dub and the voice acting was great. It's just, it seemed like it could have just been part of a season and actually would have been better off as being part of a season to flesh out more of Prushka, Bondroid, more kind of mysteries or more in-depthly explain certain kind of things. Now granted, I don't need complete and utter details. I don't need to know what power source Reg does. I just need to know what the rules are of the world and how it interacts and what is able to be done. And I don't mind those being teased or sometimes even being more mysterious of like, I don't know how the fuck this works. That's alright, as long as it's like, this is some esoteric, mysterious, eldritch fucking thing, and we don't know what the fuck it's doing here or what it can do. Okay, that's an explanation. But yeah, if you're into Made in the Abyss, it's like they did the like recap movies. It's like, okay, this will continue it on. It's like, all right, but it's always kind of weird when you do that kind of stuff. I could almost compare it, now granted, this is not the same degree, to like Kingdom Hearts, where you're trying to follow along with the story, but then you're like, hey, you gotta play this DS game, this mobile game, this PSP game, and it's like not all on the same kind of thing, and you're like, okay, so I gotta watch this movie, which is hard to try, like, not hard to find, but it's like, alright, I gotta go out of my way to watch this movie, because this is part of like them condensing the first season into 2 other movies and then finishing it off. Though sometimes they do a movie for certain kind of things, and then they're able to translate that and essentially do another kind of adaptation, but in TV form. And I thought that's what they were probably going to be doing with this. So that was like, oh, okay, I'm in, like, you would think, hey, season 1 to now season 2. It doesn't work that way, and that's kind of one of my bigger kind of gripes of like, okay, that's really kind of weird and will kind of confuse people, especially if you don't have access to Hulu or any kind of other streaming service. You're like, hey, I'm missing an entire chunk of what went on here, and I don't blame you for that. Now, would I still recommend watching it if you're into Made in the Abyss? Yep, it's still same kind of quality, maybe a little bit more stretched out than I would like. Now granted, that doesn't mean that I don't think that there should be peaks and flows within a movie. It's just, there seem to be like, alright, here's the plot that we've got, and it just feels a little bit stretched for my kind of tastes. Not that it's completely stretched out to the thing of like, dear God, you've explained the same thing to me like 50 fucking times. Can we move on, please? There are other things that have done that. This is just more like there's certain kind of dead spots that could have had better kind of stuff going on. That's all. So, I would recommend it. It's got good character work, good action that is informed by character work. That's an important bit for me. Story's decent enough. I mean, there was no kind of real giant problems with the story other than just trying to make it work and its pacing. But yeah, I would still recommend this and had a decent enough time with it. So those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.